in this session, I want to look at why I think it is so difficult. I want to look at one particular thing, which is face-to-face street fundraising, and look at why that has gone so badly wrong in the UK. Our experience may be different from yours. I appreciate that. But I do want to find who the real enemies are and how we can engage with them. I think there are a number of worrying signs for me, and I'll explain why I am worried. And I'm wondering whether fundraisers are actually capable of changing, capable of learning from experience, from their donors, and from their mistakes. So I want to look at a couple of mistakes, and I want to look at something that donors have been saying. And see if we can learn from that. And I do find that there is a culture within fundraisers that they say, well, we don't make any mistakes. What are you talking about? And I appreciate that. I just thought I would give you this quote from an American guy called Upton Sinclair, who says, "It's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on not understanding it." To me, this has a big application in how we brief and remunerate suppliers. And I'll give you an example for this. I for 20 years, ran an advertising, marketing, and communication agency in the UK, which worked all around the world. And we placed advertisements for our clients, which were almost exclusively charities, NGOs, not-for-profit organizations. And we found we were able to negotiate for charities very considerable discounts on our advertising costs. But the trouble was we were remunerated under the percentage commission system. So if we negotiated a deal for our clients, we paid half of, if I got a half-price ad, we lost half our income. Now, that is crazy. And for years, I campaigned to change it, and I was not able to do that. That simple thing, because the mindset in our charities was, well, we don't pay that. But of course they do. It's rather like our advertising agency takes us out to lunch every year. Aren't we lucky? You're paying for that lunch. There's a kind of, I think, a major component of our problems is charities are not training their people to think effectively as clients of their supplier companies. So, an example I would give of this is how we have killed the fundraising golden goose. And for me, the golden goose is face-to-face and street fundraising. How many of you don't like face-to-face fundraising? Ooh, quite a lot, right. You work for Greenpeace? Let me ask the other question. How many of you do like face-to-face fundraising? Oh, great, okay, good. I'm kind of with both of you. I don't like it in the way it's done. I do like it when it's done really well. I worked with Greenpeace in the 1980s and was lucky enough to be involved in Austria with Greenpeace when they started face-to-face fundraising, and people would queue up in the street to talk to Greenpeace. And when we took it to the UK in Brighton, testing it, people would queue up to talk to us, and they loved it. And particularly it was young people, and we had young people who were doing the conversation. We actually brought hundreds of thousands of, no, that's probably an exaggeration, tens of thousands of young people into the sector. And the other thing to realize is that at the time when Greenpeace first invented face-to-face fundraising, direct dialogue, fundraising was in a crisis, particularly in the UK, because the cost of acquiring donors through the press and direct mail had gone through the roof. And we did not know how to recruit new donors. And then suddenly there was this wonderful volume, cost-effective way of recruiting large numbers of people enthusiastically. Somehow the way we did it, it all went sour and people started crossing the street to avoid us. And this is a big subject, and I haven't really got time to go into it. But you know, I'm sure you know the golden goose story about the goose who lays the golden eggs and then dies, don't you? Okay? So I feel now there's such antipathy to street fundraising. I do not know how it can survive unless it finds a way to completely reinvent itself. And I'm not sure it will do that without a radical change in thinking from the client class. So here are 7 steps that we went down. First of all, face-to-face became all about unit cost of acquisition. Focus on the money. Drive down acquisition costs. Remunerate your agency by direct results. That was the only thing. Restricting individuality. Everybody looks the same. They're obliged now by their agreements with the Public Fundraising Authority to all look the same. So there's no individuality. There's no opportunity for inspiration. Clients abdicate responsibility to their suppliers. The process is based on interrupting rather than entertaining or informing. There's no street theatre involved. Nothing like Etta going round with her collecting boxes, not at all. I mean, Etta obviously should have signed me up for a monthly direct debit, but that's neither here nor there. I believe we failed because we didn't make the encounter enjoyable. We provided a dreadful donor experience. So in a really rather short space of time, inside about 20 years, face-to-face was suddenly not working. And I was blogging about this a little while ago, and I wrote that the fundraising acquisition paradigm has changed irrevocably. I talked about how I was proud to be part of the substantial success that face-to-face fundraising was, but if the public crossed the road to avoid us, that would be a hollow feeling. There have been plenty of work done on how we might change face-to-face fundraising, but the change has not happened because it's target-driven. I then wrote, this is 2011, I now find that the people charged with doing face-to-face are denied investment by a client class, that's the charities, not the supplier companies, that is generally risk-averse, driven by an overriding desire to drive down unit costs, blinkered by ignorance of how face-to-face fundraising works and might improve, and too junior to recognize opportunities even when they stare them in their own face. Now that's very strident condemnation. Blinkered by ignorance of how face-to-face works, too junior to recognize opportunities. I thought I would be assassinated for doing this, for saying this, but not a bit. Actually, by people who do face-to-face fundraising and who manage face-to-face fundraising teams, I get more feedback about this, and it's all in agreement. We have killed the golden goose by not equipping our people properly. And the cost that we lose by the unacceptability of face-to-face fundraising means that people are now paying to acquire new donors in the UK at a level that certainly I would think is very close to unacceptable to most donors. And that scares me about our future a great deal. So I do think there is a question about how we equip people, particularly junior people who often are in charge of the client relationships, to recognize what they're about and to do this job properly. And one of the projects for the Commission was focusing particularly on face-to-face fundraising, and it's loaded with ideas to make it better and to improve the donor experience. Getting those implemented is really a big task because they do require some investment. So I always talk about fundraising. I believe fundraising is a very difficult job. That, it's not an easy task that we set ourselves, particularly to be a donor-centered fundraiser. And I used to equate it to trying to change the tires on a car while the car is driving along at 60 kilometers per hour, which seems to me to be an impossibility. And then I saw this on the web, which is these guys from Saudi Arabia who drive their car along, tilt it over on one side, and actually get out of the car and change the wheels while it's driving, and then tilt it back again with 4 new wheels on it. Quite amazing. So even the most difficult job can be done. I think the problem with us is that as ever more money was demanded, as the cost of fundraising spiraled, and that's been one consistent of my 41 years, is the cost of fundraising has gone up and up. Raising money has become increasingly competitive and difficult. Instead of working to do things right, fundraisers increasingly feel obliged to stoop ever lower to raise what's expected of them. And that, I think, is a characteristic. Not every organization, of course, falls into that. But I do think that, particularly for smaller organizations, fundraising can seem a lonely and difficult and challenging job. And I think we've got to make more of this, because lots of people, this is Hugh MacLeod again, the gaping void. Lots of people come into our sector because they want to make a difference, and we want to make the most of that. We really want, that's what we want, we want that more, I think, than sales qualifications. We want commitment and belief and passion to make a difference, because, that's what we need to inspire our donors. I think we can make this clearer, but we've got to start doing things differently.